Welcome to Sweetcast. I'm Clint, and today's our first day of going over some comic scripts. So I pulled this one out of the archives. This is, I think, my first comic script. Keep in mind, when I wrote this, I had a lot of writing experience already. Had written 2 novels at the time, and yeah, so I had a lot of prose background in prose writing. But this is my first comic, and it is riddled with problems. So we're gonna look on the first page here, and let's see how we can improve this writing. Page 1, I've got 5 panels. That's already potentially a problem because I've set myself up for failure. Potentially, I have a big task ahead of me. I need to accomplish an establishing shot on that first page. That's just good storytelling, good comics. But I also need to, tell you what's going on, introduce you to the main character, set the mood. There's a lot of things I need to do. So that's already potentially a problem. Because this would have been the first issue in first issue of a, I think, 6-issue miniseries. So this first page would be very important. But I squandered that. So here I've got a very long panel description. I'll read it to you really quickly here. A very close shot of a thin mustached man in his mid-30s. The test pilot, he's wearing round goggles and a motorist cap. He's standing on the first platform in the Eiffel Tower. He has a slight smile showing his gritted teeth, a look of determination and anticipation. In the background, we can see that the inner workings of the Eiffel Tower, and that's not a sensical, that doesn't make sense. Still slats, but yeah, we can see the inner workings. We need to get rid of that in there. Okay, still slats. The cold February air is as thick as fog, making it impossible to see that it's only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The steel tower is coated in frost. Okay. There is a ton of information there, and some of this information is or could be important to an artist or the colorer, like the fog. I could see that maybe some color holds happening on the line art, or however an artist or a colorist is choosing to show us frost. The 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm not sure why that's important. It really makes no sense. We're just showing like a dark and foggy day, so yeah, that it doesn't make sense. This is a little bit too wordy. Having said that, the intent when I wrote this was not to show this. I wasn't going to do the artwork, and I didn't have an artist I was working with. I was going to write this and then find an artist to do the art later. And in all honesty, this was just me learning how to write comics. So yeah, there's too much information I think I could make it lean. Okay, next. Narration. Before we get into this, I have to explain, because I came into comics from a literary background, I write comics in a very particular way. So I'm kind of like, if you've read Peter Panzerfaust, Curtis Weave, I believe is his name, he's the same kind of thing, came from writing prose fiction and moved over to comics. And so you'll see this often as the caption boxes get used a lot. I love that in comics. I love using it, but I have to be careful not to overuse it. You also see the same thing. Scott Snyder does it beautifully. He will write and use these captions to tell you, get some prose there on the screen, set the mood while you're visually seeing something else. So here is how I did it. Narration. Now I know where I went wrong. Before Paris, before college, before father's funeral, when I was just Mason Webb, nothing more. All right, so that first panel, one more problem I want to point out is that we're seeing the test pilot, but we're hearing Mason Webb. That's confusing for this is the first time we're seeing any of these characters. This is confusing. So if I could go back, I would not do it like that. Panel 2. We move on to a wide shot. The Eiffel Tower is in the background. The test pilot standing on the rails at the first level, wearing a wing contraption over his shoulder. At the bottom of the frame, a group of journalists gather on the frozen grass. Mason Webb stands before the crowd. Okay, so now this panel too, this has become our establishing shot. So it would have to be a pretty large panel, I think, to show us both the test pilot on the tower, and then way down below, we're seeing Mason Webb, and understanding that that's who's this narration's coming from. So yeah, this is a problem. But the narration continues. At 8, I mounted a pair of wings on my favorite red wagon, convinced my little sister, Sylvia, to climb inside, and then I pushed her down Bickman Hill. Okay, so the idea is we're drawing a comparison visually. We're seeing Mason Webb in the past got his sister to roll down a hill with a wagon that had wings on it to try and get her to fly, and now in the present day he's essentially doing the same thing with a test pilot jumping off the Eiffel Tower. So that's not bad, but I think I could have executed this a lot better. Panel 3. We're among French journalists now, snapping pictures with these kinds of cameras, and I have a link to an old-timey camera. I could have just said they're French journalists now, they're snapping pictures with old-timey cameras. Mentioning that this is in the 1920s, this is taking place in the 1920s, would tell the artist what they need to know. So, yeah, I was just learning at the time, but just a correction there. So they're gawking at the test pilot on the distant tower. Mason Webb stands before the crowd in a three-piece suit, talking with a lovely young French journalist, emphasizing a point with his open hands. She stands with a little notebook in hand. Okay, so another thing here is I'm really, really giving the artist probably more information than the artist wants. And you'll see, like in newer scripts that I've written, I'm less descriptive. Let the artist convey what they need to convey, how they want to convey it. But basically, I just want him talking to the journalist, and she's taking notes. Now we're back into the narration. She screamed as the wagon bounced over the worn road. She called to me, but all I could do was watch her speed down the hill out of control. Okay. Problem with this panel 3. So I've been telling people two different stories, right? Visually, they're seeing what's going on. There's a man that is about to attempt to fly with some winged contraption suit and jump off the Eiffel Tower. And then I'm also telling about my main character's history with his sister. So those are two stories. And now I'm hitting you in the face with a third one. And I think that's too much to ask of readers, and it really slows down the pacing, and it makes for not a smooth read. So Webb, he's speaking to the journalist. It will fly, I can promise you that. That's what he says. She says, but why here? Why test your invention in the very same place where the flying tailor fell to his death only 12 years ago? All right, so here's where this is not good, because I don't need any of this information. I am basically showing you, and if you Google, you can look up the Flying Tailor. There's actually a video of this guy from the early 1900s or the very late 1900s, I don't know. And it was like 1905 or something. He actually jumped off the Eiffel Tower with some parachute, homemade parachute costume he made, and he died. He fell to his death. There's video of it. Look that up. So basically what I did here is I'm telling the reader that I did my research, and I know that this happened, and this happened after that event. Thing is, this is not important to the story. This information inspired me to write this story. I found it an interesting piece of history, but I don't need to shoehorn it here, especially not in the first page. So I would cut that all out. Panel 4. Onlookers point at the tower as the test pilot spreads his wings. Webb smiles with his hands on his hips. He's the only one not watching the tower. The female journalist holds her pencil to her lips, gasping. Okay, so what I'm trying to show readers here is that Webb is so confident he's not even watching. He's sure this is going to work, and everybody else is not so sure. They're afraid. So allow the artist some leeway on how they want to show that. I don't need to say exactly where his hands are placed, things like that. I can say words like confidence. He's standing confidently. Maybe that he's not looking at the tower. He's looking away, and the journalist is gasping. The artist is going to do a great job of conveying that visually. So my narration continues. But when Sylvia reached the bottom unharmed, she turned back at me, grinning like she had never had so much fun in all the 6 years of her life. Okay, so we know now in the history, the narration ended, everything ended okay. In that same panel, keep in mind, this is the moment where everyone's afraid they're going to jump. The journalist is saying, many Frenchmen would say that you are just another American parading your ego. Surely comparing yourself to Da Vinci won't help your image. When the test pilot flies over our heads using only my invention, he will land safely on the grass, and there will be no comparison. And when all the flashbulbs are spent, I'll take you for supper and dancing. So yeah, he's so confident that it's going to fly over. He's better than Da Vinci, and he's also even going to ask this journalist out on a date because he's just the man. Okay, so that was very wordy, and too much telling. I should be showing that he's confident, and I didn't. I mean, it's not the worst. I'm not saying I didn't write, I'm confident. I had him say stuff that shows you he's confident, but it's too much. Okay, panel 5. This is the last panel of the page. The shot remains on the ground with the journalist. The test pilot crouches in the distance, preparing to jump. The onlookers are focused intently on the tower, including a medic. The female journalist covers her face with both hands, gasping. Webb turns to the tower and swings a small red flag overhead, signaling the test pilot. Webb says, "Witness history." Journalist, "I pray you are right." Medic, pointing, "Bonté divine." I don't speak French. I think that says, "Oh my," or something like that. "Oh my heavens," or I have to look that up. Okay. This is, again, bogged down. I would, we don't need this exchange here. I would probably get rid of that. Or maybe even just get rid of the journalist, have the medic pointing. Maybe that's a good line. I'm not sure. There's a lot going on here, and it really slows down the pace. I would have one word balloon, really. Something snappy. But I even went farther than that. I added, now we're jumping back into the narration. We have that same old story going on at the same time. There's just really too much. In that moment, I knew I wanted to be more than just Mason Webb. I wanted to invent. I wanted to try the impossible. I wanted to be the famous Mason Webb. And I believed that the worst thing that could happen was not to try at all. Okay, so I see where I was going with this, but it fell flat. Pun not intended. But spoiler alert: the very next page, that test pilot, let's see, do I have a good thwump? Yeah, he dies, and that sort of sets up the story. Yeah, so there's a lot of problems. Your first page, you've got a lot that you need to accomplish, and you need to be very careful with what kinds of storytelling devices you're using and how you're using the art. The real estate on that first page it's very important. So if I rewrote this again, I would make it leaner. I mean, you can't have it all. You can't. So make it leaner. Let the artist show us more. And I honestly would probably be less wordy, but that's just me. I realize some comic artists write a lot in their panel descriptions. over time, mine have slimmed down a lot. All right, so I hope that you enjoyed that content. To me, writing is something that gets overlooked a lot. Writers in comics, I mean, unless you're a really big writer and you're getting a lot of attention, most writers are out there, they're trying, and it's really hard to get people to look at your scripts. So I want this to be a place where we can look at your script. So if you have a script that you want me to review, whether it's on video or not, you can email me sweetcast@mail.com, not Gmail. I don't know how long this email address is going to last. We'll see. But sweetcast@mail.com. Email me whatever you want. You could email me one page if you want, one scene. Send me a whole issue. I'll give you feedback on it. We'll treat this like a writing group. And if you're okay with it, I'd love to show some of it on video. If you're protective of that, that's okay. I've got plenty of writing of my own that we can go over together. Please, it will really help me out if you like this kind of content, if you subscribe. I am still a new channel. I want to grow and really become part of the community here and really help writers out, especially you indie writers. I want to help. We need a writers group. So please subscribe and comment. Tell me what you would do with this first page, how this could be corrected. Did I miss anything that is a problem here? And I will see you soon.